Hello, and welcome to Original Strange Fairy Tales and Other Stories. It is good to see you. Today, I have something a little different in store for you, even though I would argue that what you are about to hear is a form of fairy tale. I will take you back several hundred years to a time of epic kings, fierce battles and brave Vikings. And I must disclaim that this story might not be for the smallest children. Whether this story has some truth to it or not, I do not know. Maybe you can tell me in the comments. But that does not make it any less interesting. So, I will now tell you an epic saga that is told in 20 chapters, and I hereby bring to you the Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons. Enjoy. Chapter 1. Hymir in Hlimdalir now hears this news, that Sigurd and Brynhild are dead, but Aslaug, their daughter, and Hymir's foster child, was then 3 years old. He now knows that he must seek to protect the maiden and her lineage. He feels such great sorrow for Brynhild, his foster, that he does not care for his realm or wealth. He sees now that he cannot hide the maiden there. He has a harp made so large that he had Aslaug placed inside it, along with many treasures of gold and silver. He then travels far and wide through lands and finally here to the northern lands. His harp was skillfully made so that it could be taken apart and put back together easily. He used to do this during the day when he went by waterfalls and nowhere near settlements, taking the harp apart along with the maiden. He had a single onion and gave it to her to eat, for it is the nature of this onion that a person can live a long time, even if they have no other food. And when the maiden cried, he played the harp, and she became silent, because Hymir was well versed in the arts that were then fashionable. He also had many precious garments with her in the harp, and much gold. And now he goes there until he comes to Norway, and reaches a small village called Spangaredi, where a man named Aki lived with his wife, Grima. There were no other people there. On that day, the man had gone to the forest, and the woman was at home. She greets Hymir and asks what kind of man he is. He says he is a simple wanderer, and asks the woman to shelter him. She says that not more than this could come there, that she would treat him well if he needed to stay there. But as time passed, he said that it would be best for him if a fire were lit for him, and then he would be escorted to a sleeping chamber where he would rest. And when the woman had lit the fire, he placed the harp beside him, and the woman was speechless. She often looked at the harp because splendid clothes occasionally came out of it. And when he was warming himself by the fire, she saw a splendid gold ring emerge from under his rags as he was poorly dressed. And when he had warmed himself as much as he could, he had supper. After that, he asked the woman to accompany him to where he would sleep at night. Then the woman said that it would be better for him to be outside than inside, because my husband and I are often quarrelsome when he returns home. He asks her to decide, and so he goes out, and she as well. he takes the harp with him. The woman goes out and goes to a nearby building, telling him to stay there and that she expects he will enjoy his rest there. And now the woman goes away and tends to what she needs to, while he goes to sleep. The man returns home as evening approaches, but the woman has accomplished little of what she needed, and he was tired and in a bad mood when he arrived home, finding everything unfinished that she was supposed to take care of. The man said that there was a great difference in happiness when he worked every day more than he could, but she refused to acknowledge anything beneficial. "Do not be angry, my husband," she said, "for it may be that you could now work for a short while, so that we may be happy all our lives." "What is it?" said the man. The woman replied, "A man has come to our house, and I suspect he has a great deal of wealth, but he is advanced in age and must have been the greatest warrior. Yet he seems very tired now, and I do not think I've seen his equal, but I suspect he's weakened and weary." Then the man said, "It seems unwise to deceive those who come here in need." She replied, "You will remain little in my esteem if you keep talking like this, and now you must either kill him or I will take him for myself, and we will drive you away. And I can tell you the conversation he had with me last night, but you will think little of it. He spoke to me as if he were a woman, and my advice is to take him for myself, or drive you away or kill you, if you do not do as I say." And it is said that the man had a wife, and she keeps on talking until he yields to her persuasion, takes his axe and sharpens it vigorously, and when he is ready, the woman follows him to where Hymir sleeps, and there is a great snoring. Then the woman said to the man that he should prepare himself as best as he could, and hurry away with all speed, for you cannot withstand his outcry and rage if he catches you. She takes the harp and runs away with it. Now the man goes there where Hymir sleeps. He strikes at him, and it becomes a severe wound, and he loses his axe. He runs away as fast as he can. He wakes up from the injury, and it pains him greatly. And it is said that such a great noise arose in his struggle that the pillars went out of the house. The whole house fell down, and there was a great earthquake, and his life ended there. Now the man came to where the woman was and said that he had killed him, and yet it was a struggle, for I did not know how it would end. And this man was quite formidable, but I expect he's in hell now. The woman said he should be grateful for the deed, and I think we may now have inherited wealth, and we shall see if what I said was true. Now they light a fire, but the woman tries to lift the harp and cannot do it, for she lacks the skill, and now she manages to lift the harp, and there she sees a maiden whom she had never seen before, yet there was much wealth in the harp. Then the man said, "It often happens that it's difficult to deceive the one who trusts you. It seems to me as if enmity has come between us." The woman replied, "This is not according to my plan, but let's not argue about it now." And now she asks whose family she belonged to. But the young maiden answered nothing, as if she had not learned to speak. "It seems trouble is upon us, as I feared our plan would go wrong," said the man. "We have committed a great crime. What shall we do with this child?" "Of course," said Grima. "She shall be named after my mother, Kraka." Then the man said, "What shall we do with this child?" The woman replied, "I have a good plan. We shall say she is our daughter and raise her." "No one will believe that," said the man. "This child is much more intelligent than us. We are hopeless both, and no one will think it plausible that we will have such a child, especially since we are both so similar." Then the woman said, "You do not know, unless I have some tricks, that this may not seem unexpected. I will have a wig made for her, and cover her in tar and other things that are expected to hinder hair growth. She shall wear a hat thereafter. She shall not be well dressed either. Then our appearance will be improved. It may be that people will believe that I have been very beautiful when I was young. She shall also do the worst tasks." But both the man and the woman thought that she could not speak when she never answered them. Now what the woman planned is done. Now she grows up there in great poverty. Chapter 2. A powerful and esteemed earl ruled over Gotland named Herodur. He was unmarried. His daughter was named Thora. She was the most beautiful and courteous of all women, both in appearance and demeanour, in all matters that could be presented, and it was better to have than not. Her nickname was City Deer because she carried herself with such grace and beauty that she resembled a deer among other animals. The earl greatly loved his daughter. He had a chamber made for her a short distance from the king's hall, and around this chamber was a fence of skis. It was the earl's custom to send his daughter for amusement every day to this chamber, and he intended to continue doing so. It is said that one day he had a small heather serpent brought to her, extremely beautiful, and this serpent seemed good to her, so she placed it in her chest and put gold beneath it. It stayed there for a short while before it grew large, and the gold beneath it. There came a time when it had no room in the chest, and it now lay in a ring around the chest, and eventually it came to pass that it had no room in the chamber either, and the gold beneath it grew as much as the serpent itself. Now it lay outside the chamber, encircling it with its head and tail together, and it became troublesome, and no one dared to approach the chamber because of this serpent, except one who brought it sustenance, and he must be coaxed into it, and a great risk he must take. The earl deemed this a great harm, and made an oath that he would give his daughter to that man, whoever he may be, if the serpent were killed, and the gold under it would be her dowry. These tidings spread widely throughout the land, yet no one dared to devise a plan against this great serpent. Chapter 3. At that time Sigurdur Hringa ruled over Denmark. He was a powerful king and had become famous from the battle he fought against Harald Wartooth at Bravelir, where Harald fell before him, as is well known throughout the entire northern world. Sigurdur had a son named Ragnar. He was of great stature, handsome in appearance, and well educated, generous with his men, but fierce against his enemies. As soon as he reached adulthood, he gathered troops and warships, becoming the greatest warrior, with scarcely a match to be found. He heard what Earl Heruda had spoken of. He paid no attention and acted as if he knew nothing. He had clothes made for himself in an extraordinary manner, fur breeches and a fur cape, and when they were made, he had them boiled in a cauldron. Then he wore them. One summer, he led his army to Gotland and anchored a ship in a hidden bay not far from the one controlled by the earl. And when Ragnar had spent a night there, he woke up early in the morning, rose, took the same armour that was mentioned earlier, and went out, taking a large spear in his hand, and went alone from the ships to where there was sand, and now he rolled in the sand. Before he went away, he took a nail from his spear, and went alone from the ships to the Earl's Gate, and arrived there early in the day, so that all men were still asleep. He headed for the chamber. When he came to the skis where the serpent was, he struck it with his spear, and then he struck at the spear. The blow hit the serpent's back, and it quickly turned around, so the spear flew from the shaft, and there was such a great noise in its thrashings that the entire chamber shook. Now Ragnar turned away. A blood arc appeared between his shoulders, and he did not care about it because his clothes protected him well, as he had them made. But those who were in the chamber awoke at the noise and went out of the chamber. Thora saw a tall man leaving the chamber, and she asked him by name, or whom he wanted to find now. He stayed in place and spoke this verse: "I have risked my life, fair woman, 15 winters, awake to the earth's fish, quickly to my own. I must suffer harm unless the quick-necked kills me. The fair salmon of the heath's heart rings indeed beautifully. Its neck is bent." And now he went away and said nothing more to her, but the spear remained in the wound, and he had taken the shaft with him. Now when she heard this verse, she understood what he had said about his errand, and also how old he was. And now she wonders to herself who he might be, and she does not think she knows whether he is a human or not, because his height seems to her so great, as is told about the heroes at that age, as he was, and she turns into the chamber and falls asleep. And when people come out in the morning, they notice that the serpent is dead, and that it had been struck with a large spear, and that spear remained firmly in the wound. Now the earl has it taken away from there, and it was so large that few were fit to wield it. Now the earl ponders what he had spoken of concerning the man who would be the death of the serpent, and he does not know whether a human causes this or not, and he seeks counsel with his friends and daughter about how he should search for him. It seems likely that the one who has earned the reward will seek it. He decides to summon a great assembly and asks all those men who do not wish to incur the earl's wrath and who are able to attend the assembly to come. And if anyone knows who killed the serpent, he shall bring the spear shaft that was attached to the spear. The earl finds this agreeable and has the assembly summoned. And when the day comes for the assembly, the earl and many other chieftains arrive. There, a large crowd gathers. Chapter 4. It is heard about Ragnar's ships that a gathering had been summoned nearby, and now Ragnar departs from his ships with his entire army to the assembly. And when they arrive there, they take their stand somewhat apart from other people, for Ragnar now sees that a great multitude had gathered beyond what was usual. Then the earl rises and calls for silence and speaks, thanking those who have responded well to his summons, and then recounts the event that has occurred, first regarding what he had spoken to, the man who would be the serpent's death, then that the serpent is now dead, and someone has left the spear standing in the wound, who has accomplished this famous deed. And if anyone here at the assembly is the one who has the shaft that fits this spear, let him present it and thus confirm his claim. Then I shall fulfill all that I have promised, whether he be of higher or lower status." And he finishes his speech by having the spear brought before each man at the assembly, and asks to be told who is the one who walks with this, or has the shaft that fits it. This is done. No one is found who has the shaft. Now they come to where Ragnar is, and they show him the spear, and he goes over indicating that he will have it, and there is a match between the spear and its shaft. Now people believe that he must have killed the serpent, and he becomes greatly renowned throughout all the northern lands for this deed, and he asks for Thora, the earl's daughter, and he is received well, and now she is given to him, and there is a great feast with the best provisions in the realm. Ragnar becomes betrothed at this feast, and when the feast is over, Ragnar returns to his kingdom and rules it with Thora. They have 2 sons, one named Eiríkur the elder, and the other Agnar the younger. They were of great stature and handsome in appearance. They were much stronger than most men who were then alive. They excelled in all kinds of sports. There was a time when Thora fell ill, and she died of this illness. But Ragnar thought this a great loss, and he did not want to rule the kingdom any more, so he appointed other men to govern the kingdom with his sons. But he now resumed his former activities and set out on campaigns, and wherever he went, he achieved victory. Chapter 5. One summer he sailed with his ships to Norway because he had many relatives and friends there and wanted to visit them. He arrived with his ships one evening in a small harbour near a farm called Spangarheidi, and they stayed there in the harbour for the night. When morning came, the servants were supposed to go ashore to bake bread. They noticed a farm not far from them and thought it would be better to go there and stay. When they reached the small farm, they met a man there, who was an old woman, and they asked if she was the mistress of the house or what her name was. She said she was the mistress of the house. "And my name is Grima, or who are you?" They said they were servants of Ragnar Lothbrok and wanted to present their proposal, "And we want you to work with us." The old woman replied that her hands were very stiff, "But it used to be that I could manage my household well, and I have a daughter who will probably be with you soon, and her name is Kraka. It has now come to pass that I can barely manage her." Now Kraka goes out in the morning and sees that many large ships have arrived, so she washes herself. But the old woman had forbidden her to do so, because she did not want men to see her beauty, as she was the most beautiful of all women, and her hair was so abundant that it covered her completely, and it was as fair as the silkiest silk. And now Kraka comes home. But the servants had made a fire, and now Kraka sees that there are men there whom she has not seen before. She looks at them, and they look at her. And now they ask Grima, "Is this your daughter, the fair maiden?" "That is not likely," says Grima, "that she is my daughter." "You two would make a very odd pair," they say, "as ugly as you are. But we have never seen a maiden as fair as her, and we do not see her resemble you in any way, as you are the greatest oddity." Grima replies, "Now no one can see in me. My appearance is now different from what it used to be." They discuss this, that she should work with them. She asks, "What should I do?" They said they wanted her to knead the bread, and they would bake it afterward. And then she starts her work, and she does it well. But they always looked at her so much that they did not pay attention to their work, and the bread burned. And when they had finished their work, they went back to the ships. And when they were supposed to break up their lodgings, they all said that they had never worked so well, and that it was worth paying for. And now Ragnar asks why they had prepared such a meal. They said they had seen a woman so beautiful that they did not pay attention to their work, and they thought that no one in the world could be more beautiful than her. And when they took so much notice of her beauty, Ragnar says, and claims to know that she is not as beautiful as Thora had been. They said she was not unpleasant. Then Ragnar said, "Now I will send men who truly know how to see. If it is as you say, then this carelessness has been excused. But if the woman is in any way more unpleasant than you have told me, you will receive severe punishment." And now he sends his men to meet this fair maiden. But the weather was so bad that they could not go that day. And Ragnar said to his men, "If this young maiden seems as fair to you as we have been told, ask her to come to meet me, and I want to meet her. I want her to be mine. I do not want her to be clothed or unclothed, fed or unfed, but she should not go alone, and yet no one should accompany her." Now they went until they came to the house and looked at Kraka carefully, and they thought the woman so beautiful that they did not consider anyone else as fair. And now they tell their lord Ragnar's words, and how she should be prepared. Kraka thought about how the king had spoken, and how she should behave, but Grimar thought that no king could be so wise. Kraka says, "He must have said so, and it will be so if we understand what he means. But surely I cannot go on your expedition today, but I will come early in the morning to your ships." Now they went away and told Ragnar how she should be prepared to meet them, and now she is home for the night. And early in the morning Kraka tells the man that she will go to meet Ragnar. "But I will have to change my outfit somewhat. You have the fishing net, and I will weave it for me, and then I will let my hair fall over it, and then I will be naked, and I will hide a leek, and it is a small meal, but still it can be recognized that I have hidden it. And I will let your dog accompany me, and then I will not go alone, but still no one will accompany me." And when the old woman hears her plan, she thinks she has a lot of sense, And when Kraka is ready, she goes her way until she comes to the ships. And she was beautiful to look at, as her hair was bright, and as if it were a single piece of gold. And now Ragnar calls her and asks who she is, or whom she wants to find. She answers and says a verse, "I will not break a command, since you bid me come, nor will I break a king's promise, Ragnar, to meet you. There is no one with me, my hair is bare of ornaments, I have a good companion, I go alone my way." Now he sends men to meet her, and lets them follow her onto his ship. But she says she does not want to go unless she is given protection, and her companion is allowed to come with her. Now she is escorted onto the king's ship, and when she enters the cabin, he comes to meet her, but the dog bites his hand. His men run over and kill the dog, and put a noose around his neck, and he dies from it, and no better protection was provided for her. Now Ragnar puts her in a bed beside him and chats with her, and he was in good spirits with her and was kind to her. He says a verse, "If only I had a guardian, a worthy husband's father, would take the hands of a precious, gentle wife." She says, "You should be without blame, ruler. If you want to protect me, we have sought shelter from the king at home. Let me go from here." Chapter 6. Now he says that he likes her well, and is certain that she should go with him. Then she said it could not be so. Then he said he wanted her to stay overnight on the ship. She says it shall not be until he returns from the journey he had planned, and it may be that you will see it differently then. Then Ragnar calls his steward and tells him to take the shirt that Thora had owned, which was all embroidered with gold, and bring it to him. Then Ragnar offers Kraka the shirt with these words, "Will you accept this one, which Thora wore, the shirt adorned with silver? The same clothes suit you well. Her white hands were under these sleeves. That was a noble woman's. Gentle apparel." Kraka replied, "I will not accept that one, which Thora wore, the shirt adorned with silver. The same clothes are base to me, for I am called Kraka in coal-black garments, for I've walked over rocks and driven goats to sea. And I certainly do not want to accept the shirt," she says. "I do not want to dress up while I am with a man. It may be that you will like me better if I dress better, and I want to go home now. But then you can do as you please with me, if you still have that in mind and want me to go with you." Ragnar says that his mind will not change, and she goes home, and they went as they had planned as soon as the wind allowed, and he finishes his errands as he had planned. And when he returns, he finds himself in the same harbour as when Kraka came to him before. And that same evening he sends men to meet her, to tell her Ragnar's words, that she should come ashore now. But she says she will not go until the morning. Kraka rises early and goes to the bed of the man and woman and asks if they are awake. They said they were awake and asked what she wanted, and she said she intended to leave and not stay there any longer. "And I know that you killed Jaime, my foster father, and I will not repay anyone worse than you, and for that reason I will not let you suffer that I have been with you for a long time. But I want to say this, that one day will be worse for you than the other when it comes upon you, and the last will be the worst, and we will now part." Then she goes her way to the ships, and she is well received there. The weather is good for them. That same evening, when people are to lie under cover, Ragnar says that he wants Kraka to sleep with him. She says that it cannot be so, "And I want you to drink to my wedding when you come into your kingdom, and it seems to me that my honour is the same as yours and our heirs, if we have any." He grants her request, and they part well. Ragnar now returns to his land, and a magnificent feast is prepared for him, and now both wedding ale is drunk to greet him and his wedding. And on the first evening when they come to bed, Ragnar wants to have marital relations with his wife, but she declines, saying that something will be carried on her back if she does not. Ragnar said he would not believe that, saying they are not shown to men and women. He asked how long it should be like this. Then she said, "We shall have 3 of these, and yet together dwell, each alone in the hall, before the holy gods are worshipped. Then harm will befall my sons. Through me for a long time, rather you are eager to start. What has no bones?" And though she spoke these words, Ragnar paid no attention to it, and proceeded with his plan. Chapter 7. Time passes, and their companionship was good, with great affection between them. But Kraka becomes ill and gets better, and a boy is born, and the boy was baptized and named Ivar, and the boy was boneless, like cartilage where bones should be. And when he was young, he grew so tall that no one was his equal. He was the most handsome of all men, and so wise that it is not certain who has been a greater sage than him. They were blessed with more children. Their other sons were named Björn, the third Vitserka, the fourth Rögnvaldr. They were all great men and the bravest, and as soon as they were able to manage, they learned all kinds of skills. And wherever they went, Ivar was carried on poles because he could not walk, and he was to have control over them in whatever they undertook. Now Eireka and Agnar, Ragnar's sons, were great men in their own right, so much so that they were scarcely matched, and they each had their own warships, and each summer they distinguished themselves in their warfare. And now one day Ivar talks to his brothers, Vitserka and Björn, about how long they should continue on this path, staying at home without seeking any fame. But they say that they should follow his advice in other matters. "Now I want," says Ivar, "that we wait until we are given ships and men, so that they are well equipped, and then I want us to enrich ourselves in wealth and honor if the opportunity arises." And when they had decided this among themselves, they tell Ragnar that they want him to provide them with ships and men who are experienced in plunder and well equipped for all reasons. And he does so as they requested, and now that this band is ready, they leave the country, and where they fight against men they gain more advantage, and now get both many men and wealth. And now Ivar says he wants them to stay until there is greater opposition, and he tests his courage thus, and they ask where he knows this to be expected. And now he names a place called Havitaber, where sacrifices had been made, and many have tried to win there, and none have succeeded. And Ragnar had been there, and had to turn back and could not accomplish anything. "Is the force there so great," they say, "and so difficult, or are there other obstacles?" Ivar says that there was both a great multitude and a great sacrificial place, and it had overcome everyone, and no one had stood firm. And now they ask if he should decide whether they should go there or not. But he says that he would rather risk whether they could withstand greater hardness or the idolatry of the country. Chapter 8. Now they head there, and when they arrive in the land, they prepare for an assault, and now it seems to them that some of the ships need guarding. But Rögnvaldr, their brother, was young, and they thought he might not be ready for such a great test as they thought likely to come, so they let him guard the ships with some men. But before they leave the ships, Ivar says that the townspeople have 2 beasts, and they are cattle, and people had looked away from it because their death and sorcery could not be withstood. Then Ivar says, "Act as best you can, even if some fear befalls you, for there will be no blame." Now they organize their men, and when they approach the town, they are noticed by those who inhabit the place, and now they start to release this beast they trusted in. And when the cattle are set free, they run hard and cause harm. Now Ivar sees this, where he is carried on a shield, and asks for a bow, and so it was done. Now he shoots these evil beasts so that both get killed, and now this unrest that men thought was the greatest fear is over. Now Ragnar takes up the words at the ships and speaks to his men, that those men are blessed who should have such amusement as his brothers have. And there is nothing else for them to do, but to have honour from it alone. Now we shall go up to the city. And now they do so. And when they come after the men, Ragnar goes hard into battle, and it ends so that he falls. But his brothers manage to get into the city, and a new battle ensues, and it ends so that the townspeople flee, and they chase the fugitives. And when they turn back to the city, Björn speaks a verse. We rushed up with a shout. We bit harder than they did, I will tell the truth, swords, in Gnipafjörður. Each one could, who wanted to, outside Vitabear, not spare his sword. A killer of men. And when they come back to the city, they take all the loose property and burn every house in the city and break down all the city walls. And now they head back to their ships. Chapter 9. There was a king named Eystein who ruled over Sweden. He was a widower and had one daughter named Ingibjörg. She was the fairest and most beautiful of all women. King Eystein was powerful and populous, ambitious yet wise. He had his seat in Uppsala. He was a great sacrificer, and at Uppsala sacrifices were so grand in those times that there have been none greater in the northern lands. They had great faith in one cow, which they called Sibylla. She was so revered that men could not withstand her gaze. Therefore the king was accustomed, when there was a war threat, to have this cow stationed before the battle lines, and such great demonic power followed her that his enemies were so terrified upon hearing about her that they fought among themselves and did not pay attention to their own defence. For this reason there was no one daring in Sweden, as people did not trust in facing such overpowering force. King Eystein had alliances with many men and chieftains, and it is said that at that time there was a great friendship between him and King Ragnar. They were accustomed to celebrating feasts in each other's honour each summer. Now it happens that Ragnar is to attend a feast at King Eystein's, and when he comes to Uppsala, he and his men are well received. And on the first evening the king orders his daughter to serve him and Ragnar. And Ragnar's men privately remarked to him that no one else was more fit than he to marry King Eystein's daughter, as he did not have a wife any more. And now it happens that one of his men must convey this to him, and it ends with him being promised the king's daughter, although she was to remain betrothed for a long time. But when this feast is over, Ragnar prepares to leave, and he is farewelled, and nothing is said about his journey until he is near the town, and his path lies through a certain forest. They come to a clearing in the forest. Then Ragnar orders his men to halt and calls for silence, and asks all the men who had accompanied him to Sweden not to reveal his plan regarding King Eystein's daughter. He lays down strict penalties that whoever dares to speak of it shall lose nothing less than their life. And now that he has spoken as he wished, he returns home to the city. And now men are glad when he returns, and a feast of celebration is held in his honour. And when he sits in the high seat and has not sat long, Kraka comes into the hall before Ragnar and sits on his knee, and puts her hands around his neck and asks, "What are the tidings?" But he claims not to know. And as the evening wears on, people start drinking, and then they go to sleep. And when Ragnar and Kraka come to bed, she asks him again about the news, but he claims to know nothing. Now she wishes to coax many things out of him, but he claims to be very sleepy and weary. "Now I will tell you the tidings," she says, "if you will not tell me anything." He asks what it is. "I call that tidings," she says, "when a king promises his daughter, but it is the talk of some men that he has no other intentions before he sees her." "Who told you this?" says Ragnar. "Your men shall keep their lives and limbs intact, "For no one told me of your intentions," she says. "You should have seen that 3 birds were sitting in the trees near you. They told me this news. I ask that you do not carry out what is planned. Now I will tell you that I am a king's daughter, not a man's, and my father was such a renowned man that none could equal him, and my mother was the fairest and wisest of all women, and her name will be remembered as long as the world stands." Then he asks who her father was if she was not the daughter of that poor man who lived on Spangar Heidi. She says that she is the daughter of Sigurdur Fafnisbana and Brynhildr Budladottur. It seems very unlikely to me that the daughter of those two would be named Kraka, or that their child would grow up in such poverty as was on Spangar Heidi. Then she answers, "There is a story about it," and now she tells and recounts the story from when they met on the mountain, Sigurdur and Brynhildr, and she was initiated. "And when Brynhildr became lighter, a name was given to me, and I was called Aslaug." And now she tells everything that happened from when they met the man. Then Ragnar answers, "I will not escape from Aslaug's persuasion," she says. "It will be a boy that I am carrying, but that boy will have a mark. It will seem as if a snake lies around the boy's eye. And if this comes to pass, I ask that you not come to Sweden at the time that you would marry King Eystein's daughter. But if this mark disappears, go where you will. But I want this boy to be named after my father if this mark is in his eye, as I intend it to be." Now the time comes when she notices she is pregnant and becomes lighter. Now the serving women take the boy and show him to her. Then she says to bring him to Ragnar and let him see. And now it is done, and that young man was brought into the hall and laid in Ragnar's lap. And when he sees the boy, he is asked what the boy's name should be. He recites a verse. "The boy shall be named Sigurdur. He will stir up battles, much like his mother, and called his father's heir. He shall be called the most magnificent offspring of the Odin's lineage, he who has an eye with a snake, who made another starve." Now he draws gold from his hand and gives it to the boy at the naming ceremony. And when he extends his hand with the gold, he stands behind the boy, and Ragnar observes this as if he despised the gold. And now he recites a verse. "The gleam of Brynhildr's eyes seems to have a bright brown stone, the son of the dearest king, and the most faithful heart. He carries to all people the message of the enemy of the monster, Budla's descendant, who quickly received the red gold ring." And he recites another, "I saw no other boy than Sigurdur alone, to have in brown stones the reins of the bearded hero. He has the morning dew. He is eager to learn it, sharp in the barley field, got the ring of the dark wood." Now he says that the boy should be taken out to the chamber, and when it was over, that he would go to Sweden. And now the lineage of Aslaug comes to light, so that everyone knows that she is the daughter of Sigurdur Fafnisbana and Brynhildr Budlado. Chapter 10. Now the time had passed when it was decided that Ragnar should attend the feast in Uppsala, but he did not come. This was considered an insult to King Eystein and his daughter, and thus their friendship came to an end. When Eric and Agnar, Ragnar's sons, heard about this, they discussed among themselves that they would gather a great army and raid Sweden. So they gathered a large army and prepared their ships, although it was difficult to get everything in order when it came to launching the ships. Then Agnar's ship slipped off the launch, and a man was killed, which they called the launch misfortune. At first, things did not go well for them, but they were determined not to abandon their expedition. When their army was ready, they set out for Sweden, and when they first entered King Eystein's realm, they began to plunder. The locals became aware of this and went to Uppsala to inform King Eystein that an army had arrived in the country. The king sent out messages throughout his realm and gathered such a large army that it was remarkable. He marched this army until he reached a forest, where he set up his camp. He had with him the cow Sibylla, who was now greatly honored before she was about to be sacrificed. While they were in the forest, King Eystein said, "I have heard that Ragnar's sons are on the plains in front of the forest, and it is truly said that they do not have a third of our army. Now we shall organize our formations for battle, and a third of our army shall go out to meet them. They are so bold that they will think they have the upper hand, and as soon as they engage, we shall all attack them, and the cow shall go ahead of the army. I expect that they will not resist after her death." And so it was done. As soon as the brothers saw King Eystein's army, they did not consider it overwhelming, and did not expect there to be more troops. Shortly afterward, the entire army emerged from the forest, and the cow was set free, running ahead of the troops and bellowing fiercely, causing a great noise among the soldiers who heard it, except for the two brothers who stood their ground. The evil spirit accompanied many men with her horns that day. Although Ragnar's sons were formidable fighters, they could not withstand both the overwhelming numbers and the sacrificial rites. Nevertheless, they fought fiercely, defended themselves well, and bravely gained much renown. Eric and Ragnar were in the forefront that day, often cutting through King Eystein's formations. And now Ragnar fell. Seeing this, Eric fought even more valiantly, and no longer cared whether he survived or not. Eventually, he was overwhelmed and captured. Then King Eystein ordered the battle to cease and offered Eric mercy. "I will make this offer to you," he said, "that I will give you my daughter in marriage." Eric replied and said a verse, "I do not want to bargain. For my brother's life or by maidens with rings, Eystein has decreed. Ragnar's death I have heard. My mother will not weep. I will go to the slaughter bravely, and if a spear pierces my chest, let me remain standing upright." Then he said that he wanted those men to have peace and go wherever they wanted, who had followed him. "But I want the spears to be taken, as many as possible, and to be thrust into the ground. And there I want to be raised up, and there I want to draw my last breath." King Eystein agreed to this, even though he thought it was not favorable to either party. The spears were placed in the ground, and Eric said a verse, "No king's matter will end thus. So I have learned from examples, the ravens will then feast. On the noble beds, the brothers' wounds will soon bleed, and many shall meet their doom, if ill deeds are not avenged." Then he went to where the spears were placed and took a ring from his hand and threw it to those who had followed him. And then mercy was granted to him, and he sent it to Aslaug and said a verse, "Take these words from above. Your journey eastward is over. Let my maiden Aslauga receive the rings. Then, when I am dead, if you hear of my death, tell my stepmother kindly about her sons." And now he was raised up on the spears. Then he saw where the raven flew, and he said again, "The mare of the sea foams. Here at my wound the raven craves the eyes of those who are unseen. Know if the raven from my head strikes my brow's stone, Echil's raven will exact much ill." Then he met his death with great courage. His messengers went home and did not rest until they arrived at the place where Ragnar resided. Then he was summoned to the king's meeting. Ragnar's sons had not yet returned from the expedition. They were there for 3 nights before meeting Aslaug, and when they stood before Aslaug's high seat, they greeted her respectfully, and she returned their greeting. She had a linen cloth in front of her knees, and intended to comb her hair, and she had loosened her hair. She asked who they were because she had not seen them before. The one who spoke for them said that they had been followers of Eric and Ragnar, Ragnar's sons. Then she said a verse, What do you say, strangers? Are Swedes in the land, or elsewhere, talking with the king's maidens? I have heard, but know no more, that chiefs have caused trouble, Danes from the south. He replied in a verse, We tell you, woman, that you must know, death awaits, ill fate for a certain man, the sons of Thora, other ill tidings. We do not know. Now I have come forth with news. An eagle flies close to death. Then she asked how things had gone. He then recited the verse that Eric had said when he sent her the ring. Then they saw that she shed tears, and it seemed as if blood were seen, hard as hailstones. No one had seen her shed tears before or since. Then she said that she could not undertake revenge until either Ragnar or his sons returned home. But you shall stay here until then, and I will not spare any effort to incite revenge, as if they were my own sons. So they stayed there. It turned out that Ivar arrived home before Ragnar, and they were not long at home before Aslaug went to meet her sons, and Sigurd was then 3 years old. He went with his mother. And when she entered the hall where the brothers ruled, they greeted her warmly and asked each other for news. They recounted the fall of Rognvald, her son, and the events that had happened there, but she did not attach much importance to that, and said, My son's companions let me. Be lost long ago, you come home and are guests here as usual. Rognvald took to reddening, the shield in men's. I cannot see it, she says, that he would live to greater fame. Now they ask her what news she has. She answers, The fall of your brothers Eirika and Agnar, and my stepsons, the men I believe to have been the best warriors, and it is inconceivable that you would endure such without seeking great vengeance. And I ask of you, and urge you with all my effort, that this be more avenged than in moderation. Now Ivar says, It is certain that I will never come to Sweden at such a time, that I would fight against King Eystein and the blasphemy that is there. She agrees well with this, and Ivar has the authority over them and always manages the journey. And now she recites a verse. It would not be unfair to you, brothers, if for a single winter you died before me. I pay little attention to hiding it if life could be spared. For your sons Eirika and Agnar, my unbaptized grandsons. It is uncertain, says Ivar, whether that supports anything, even if you recite another verse in response to the first, or how do you know what kind of stronghold is there? I do not know for sure, she says, or what do you know to say, what difficulty there is? Ivar says that there is such great blasphemy that nowhere did he say he had asked if such were to be, and that king is both powerful and greedy. What is it that he trusts most in the sacrifices? He says, that is a great cow, and she is called Sibylla. She is so powerful that as soon as people hear her call, his enemies cannot withstand, and it is hardly fought against men alone. Rather, it might be expected that trolls will meet first rather than the king, and I do not want to risk neither myself nor my people there. She says, on the other hand, you might not be able to both be called the greatest man and not achieve anything. And now, as she thinks hope is lost, she plans to leave. They did not seem to value her words much. Then Sigurd spoke from his snake eye. I can tell you, mother, he says, what is on my mind, but I cannot decide their responses. I want to hear that, she says. Now he recites a verse. For 3 nights it shall be, if you desire it, mother. Before we embark, the expedition shall be prepared. We shall not to Uppsala go, even if great wealth invites us. If we have the courage, King Eystein shall rule. And when he had recited this verse, their spirits were somewhat lifted. And now Aslaug says, You are now making my will clear, my son, but I cannot see us proceeding with this if we do not have the support of your brothers. And it may be that it would seem best to me that this be avenged, and it seems good to me that you go, my son." And now Björn recites a verse. "Courage and heart shall suffice in the hawk's breast, though I say less about it, within a man's ribs. We are not in the eyes. Of snakes or crafty serpents, my cheerful brothers, your stepson will not be lacking." And now Hvitserkr recites a verse. "Let us believe before we swear that vengeance may be had. Let us rejoice in various evils, the slayer of Ragnar. We shall cut the ice before the prow, and strike the ice in front of the ship's bow. Let us see how quickly we can get the boats ready." And Hvitserkr spoke about it, that the ice should be cut, for there was great frost, and their ships were frozen in. And now Ivar took the floor, and says that now it had come to that, where he might have some part in it, and now he recites a verse. "Have excessive courage and determination as well, we would then need. That great desire follow, I shall be carried before the wolves, without bones. Though I reach out my hand for vengeance, I will not use it." And now he says, we shall have such a mindset as we can for ship preparations and for assembling the army, because we will need it without sparing if we are to prevail. Now Aslaug goes away. Chapter 11. Sigurdur had acquired for himself a foster brother, and he took care of both preparing ships and gathering troops on his behalf, so that they were all fully equipped. And now it went so quickly for them that the troop, which Sigurdur was supposed to have prepared, was ready within 3 nights, and he had 5 well-equipped ships. And when 5 nights had passed, Hvitserkr and Björn had prepared 14 ships, while Ivar had 10 ships, and Aslaug another 10, when 7 nights had passed since they had decided and pledged to the journey. Now they all come together, and each tells the other how much troops they had obtained. And now Ivar says that he had sent a land route for cavalry. Aslaug says, "If I knew that the troops sent by land could be of use, then I could have sent a large troop." "We shall not delay about that now," says Ivar. "With this troop we shall now go, as we have gathered together." Now Aslaug says that she wants to go with them. "And I know then that every moment is right to avenge their brothers." "It is certain," says Ivar, "that you will not come on our ship. It shall be, if you wish, that you command the troop that goes by land." She agreed to this. Now her name is changed, and she is now called Randaline. Now both troops set off, and Ivar had specified beforehand where they should meet. Now they both travel well, and meet where it was agreed, and wherever they come in Sweden, in the realm of King Eystein, they wreak havoc, burning everything in their path, killing every living being, and they intensified their fury by killing everything that was alive. Chapter 12. At one time, some men managed to escape and came to King Eystein, telling him that a great army had arrived in his realm and conducted such terrible raids that they left nothing untouched, destroying everything in their path, and no house remained standing. When King Eystein hears this news, he thinks he knows who these Vikings must be, and now he sends swift messengers throughout his realm, summoning all those who are his men and willing to provide troops, with the authority to command as they see fit. "We shall take with us our cow Sibylla, our deity, and let her run before the troops, and I expect that as before, they will not be able to withstand her voice. I want to encourage all my troops to do their best, and let us drive away this great and evil host." And so it is done. Sibylla is set free to run. And now Ivar sees her coming, and hears those terrifying sounds that come from her. He commands that all the troops make a great noise, both with their weapons and battle cries, so that they hear her voice, that evil creatures, as little as possible. Ivar speaks to his bearers, instructing them to carry him forward as fast as they can. And when that cow approaches us, throw me towards her, and then it will be either that I shall give my life, or she shall meet her death. Now take a large tree and carve it into the shape of a bow, and make a spear with it. And now the strong bow is brought to him, and the large spear he had made, but no one else seemed to be armed. Now Ivar encourages each man to do his best. Now their troop moves with great noise and clamour, while Ivar is carried before their ranks. Now there is such a great noise when Sibylla bellows that they hear as little as if they were silent and still. They react to this, so that their troops want to fight all except the brothers. And when this moment comes, they see what Ivar bears, that he pulls his bow as if he had a weak willow stick, and yet it seemed to them that he was drawing forth the arrow from the strongest bow, and towards him each of his arrows comes straight into the eye of Sibylla. And now she falls, and after that she falls headlong, and now her cries are much worse than before. And when she approaches them, he asks them to throw him towards her, and then he becomes as light as if they threw a little child, because they were not very close to the cow when they threw him. And then he lands on the back of the cow, Sibylla, and then he becomes so heavy as if a mountain fell on her, and every bone in her breaks, and she dies from it. Now he asks the men to pick him up as quickly as possible, and now he is lifted up, and now his voice is so loud that it seemed to all the army, when he spoke, as if it were itself, even though it was far away, and the best sound was given to his command. And so he finishes his speech, that this disturbance immediately ceases, which had come over them all, and then they did not find any fault, because their troops had fought for a short time. Now Ivar encourages them to do the worst deeds on them. And now it seems to me the greatest hardship that the cow is killed. And now both sides have formed their troops, and the battle ends, and the battle is so fierce that all the Swedes said that there had never been such a test of men. Now the brothers, Vitserker and Björn, advance so fiercely that no formation stands against them, and now the troops of King Eystein fall so heavily that less stands up than falls, and some flee. And now their battle ends. King Eystein falls, and the brothers have victory. And now they grant mercy to those who remained. And now Ivar says that he does not want to raid further in this land, as that land is now without a leader. And I would rather we stayed there until there is more resistance. But Randalin went home with some of the troops. Chapter 13. Now they decide among themselves that they shall raid in the southern kingdom, and Sigurdur, the snake in the eye, her son, went with his brothers on every campaign afterward. In these expeditions they attack each city, which is great and populous, and conquered them all without resistance. And now they inquire about one city that was both large and well fortified, and Ivar says that he wants to go there. And it was also said what that city was called, and who was in charge, and the leader was called Vifil. The city was named Vifilsborg after him. Now they march over the fields, so that they destroy all the cities in their path, until they come to Vifilsborg. The chief was not at home in his city, and he had much troops with him. Now they set up their tents in the fields near the city, and are quiet the day they arrived at the city, and they had negotiations with the citizens. They offered them whether they would rather surrender the city, and then peace would be given to all men, or they would fight with their might, and then no man would be granted peace. But they quickly rejected it, and said that they would never surrender that city, so that they would give it up. And you will have to prove yourselves, and show us your bravery and courage first. The night passes, and the next day they try to take the city and do not succeed. They besiege the city for half a month, and try every day to conquer it, but to no avail, using various tactics. But the further they look, and the longer they seek, they intended to leave. And when the citizens notice that they intend to leave, they go out on the city walls and spread gold and the finest clothes that were in the city and dry them in front of them, with gold and gems that were the most in the city. And then one of their men speaks up and says, "We thought that these men, the sons of Ragnar, and their troops were tough men, but we can say that they have not fared better than others." After this they attack them and beat on their shields and challenge them as much as they can. And when Ivar hears this, he becomes very agitated, so much so that he falls ill, so that he cannot move anywhere, and they have to wait lest he either recover or perish. He lies all day until evening, so that he does not speak. And then he speaks to the men who were with him, that they should tell Björn, Hvitserker, and Sigurdur that he wants to meet them and all the wisest men. And now when they all come to one place, where most of the leaders are in their group, Ivar asks them if they have seen any plans that are more likely to succeed than those they had before. But they all answer that they do not have the knowledge to see those tactics that would bring them victory. It is as often that your advice will be useful. Then Ivar answers, "One plan has come to mind that we have not tried. Here is a large forest not far away, and now, when it is night, we shall go from our tents secretly to the forest, and our camp shall remain, and when we come into the darkness, each man shall carry a burden. And when it is done, we shall go to the city on all sides and set fire to the woods, and then a great fire will arise, and their city walls will then release their mortar before the fire, and then we shall throw ourselves at the city walls and try how strong it is." And now it is done. They go to the forest, and there is such a storm as Ivar showed. Now they go to the city according to his instructions. And when they set fire to the great forest, the fire became so great that the walls could not withstand it and released their mortar. And they then threw themselves at the city walls and broke many gates. And then a battle ensued. And as soon as they stood equal in battle, the city's troops fell, and some fled, and so their turn ends, that they kill every person who was in the city, and take away all the wealth, and burn the city before they leave. Chapter 14. Now they depart from there until they come to the city called Luna. By then they had nearly conquered every city and castle in the southern kingdom, and now they are so famous throughout the world that there was hardly a child who did not know their names. Now they intend not to lighten up until they come to the city of Rome, because that city was both said to be great, populous, famous, and wealthy. But they did not know exactly how far the journey was, and they had so many troops that accommodations were scarce. And now they are in the city of Luna, and discuss their journey among themselves. Then a man comes there, old and wise. They ask who he is, and he says that he is just a wanderer, and has travelled all his life across the land. "You must know many tidings to tell us, which we want to know." The old man answers, "I do not know for sure from which lands you want to ask, of which I do not know to tell you. We want you to tell us how long the journey is from here to the city of Rome." He answers, "I can tell you some signs. You can see these iron shoes that I have on my feet. They are now worn out. And then the others that I have on my back, they are also worn out. But when I left from there, I tied these worn ones on my feet, which I now have on my back, and they were both new then, and I have always been on this journey since then." And when the old man had said this, they think that they cannot continue on this path, that they had planned to go to Rome. And now they turn away with their army and conquer many cities that had never been conquered before, and these signs are still visible today. Chapter 15. Now it is time to speak of Ragnar, who sits at home in his kingdom, not knowing where his sons or Randalin, his wife, are. And he heard everyone speak of his sons, saying that no one could compare to them, and he thought to himself that none were as famous as they. Now he considers how he might seek fame that is not shorter-lived. He plans his course of action and has 2 large ships built, such as had never been made in the Northlands, and with this he arms all his mighty realm. With this preparation, it is understood that he intends to launch a campaign from the land. This news spreads far and wide to neighboring lands, and now men and all the kings who ruled over lands feared that they might not be able to withstand him in their lands or kingdoms, and now each of them takes precautions for his own land, if any should attack him. Once Randalin asked Ragnar what journey he intended for himself. He tells her that he plans to go to England and has no more ships than 2 Nars and the men who can fit on them. Then Randalin says, "That journey seems reckless to me, which you are now planning. It would seem more prudent for you to have more ships and smaller ones." "That is not the case," he says, "though men may conquer land with many ships. But there are no examples where such land as England has been conquered with 2 ships. And if I am defeated, it is better that I have fewer ships out of the country." Then Randalin replies, "It seems to me that the cost is not less before these ships are fitted out than if you had many long ships for this journey. But you know that it is difficult to maintain ships in England, and if it happens that your ships are lost, even if men reach the land, they are immediately at the mercy of the land army. But it is better to have long ships for harbours than knars." Now Ragnar composes a verse, "Sparingly the breaker of shields, of the war river lets the host resound, worse it suits the wise king, to lose the multitude of rings than of men. It is ill to stand forward in the gate, with red brand before a shield. I know many princes, who, rich in wealth, yet die." Now he has his ships prepared and gets himself a crew so that the Nars are well manned. Now there is much talk about his plan, and again he composed a verse. "What is that ring's origin, which the breaker hears now thunder, that the horse of the wealth fires woods, may scorch the sea with eager fire? Thornbill shall have control of it, if the gods will. The fear of the oar's storm shall await the undaunted." And when his ships are ready and the weather he deemed favourable, Ragnar says that he will then go to the ships. And when he is ready, she leads him to the ships. And before they part, she promised to reward him with a shirt which he had given her. He asks how that could be, and she recites a verse, "I give you the inner shirt, and sewn nowhere, woven with a whole heart. From grey hair, no wound shall bleed, nor shall the edges bite you. In the sacred garment it was blessed by the gods." He says that he will accept this advice, and when they part, it is evident that she feels greatly for their separation. Ragnar now sails with his ships to England as he had intended. A strong wind drives him towards England, and both his Nars are broken by the time he reaches land, but all his men reach land, keeping their clothes and weapons, and wherever he comes to villages and towns and castles, he raids them. The king's name was Ella, who ruled over England. He had received news about Ragnar when he left the country. He had arranged for men to inform him as soon as the army came ashore. Now men go to meet King Ella and tell him of the army's saga. Now he sends messengers throughout his kingdom and asks every man who can wield weapons and ride horses and dare to fight to come to him, and he gathers such a great army that it was astonishing. They prepare for battle against King Ella. Then King Ella spoke to his men. "If we are victorious in this battle, and you notice that Ragnar has come, you must not bear weapons against him, for he has sons left behind who will never forgive us if he falls." Ragnar prepares for battle, and he wore the clothing that Randalin had given him at their parting, instead of armour, and the spear in his hand, which he had won from the serpent that lay around Thora's hall, and no one dared to use any other weapon. And he had no defense but his helmet. And when they met, the battle began. Ragnar had a much smaller force. The battle had not lasted long before Ragnar's men fell heavily. But where he went, there was a rout before him, and he went through Ella's ranks that day, and where he struck or laid in shields, armour or helmets, his blows were so great that nothing stood against them, and he never received such a blow or shot that no weapon was harmful to him, and he never got hurt, but he killed many of King Ella's men. But their battle ended with all of Ragnar's men falling, but he himself was taken prisoner, and his shields were borne away, and he was taken alive. Now he was asked who he was, but he remained silent and answered nothing. Then King Ella said, "This man will have to undergo greater trials if he does not want to tell us who he is. Now he shall be thrown into a snake pit and left there for a long time, and if he speaks anything that we can understand that he is Ragnar, he shall be taken away as quickly as possible." Now he was taken there, and he sat there for a long time, so that no snakes fastened to him. Then people said, "This man is great for himself. The weapons did not bite him today, but the snakes do not harm him either." Then King Ella said that he was a garment of the cloth he had worn outside, and now it was done, and all the snakes clung to him. Then Ragnar said, "Now pigs would squeal if they knew what the old man was enduring." And even though he spoke such words, they did not know for sure that he was Ragnar rather than another king. Now he recited a verse. "I have fought battles which seemed glorious. I have caused harm to many men, 5 tens and 1. I never thought of serpents. For my life's end, many times it happens, that the least keeps oneself." And he recited another, "The pigs would squeal. If they knew the fortune of the boar, I have plenty of harm. The runes suck at my wounds, and harshly bite, the snakes have sucked me. Now I shall be a corpse by their art, and near death." Now he lets his life go, and when he is taken away from there. But King Ella thinks that Ragnar has given up his life. Now he considers how he should best be wary of this, or accompany it, so that he may hold on to his kingdom, or know how to deal with Ragnar's sons when they ask. He decides to have one ship prepared, and appoints a man to lead it, who was both wise and tough, and he gathers men for it so that the ship is well equipped, and he says that he will then send it to meet Ivar and his brothers, and tell them of their father's fate. But this journey seems unexpected to most, so few wanted to go. Then the king said, "You must carefully consider how each of the brothers reacts to this news. Go your way after the weather permits." So he arranges their journey in such a way that they need nothing else, and now they go, and their journey goes well. But Ragnar's sons had raided the southern kingdoms. Then they turned to the northern lands, intending to visit their realm, which Ragnar ruled, but they did not know of his expedition, how it had turned out, and although they were very curious about what had happened, now they travelled southward, and wherever news of their journey reached, people destroyed their towns, and took their belongings away and fled, so that they could hardly find food for their men. One morning, Bjorn Ironside woke up and recited a verse. "Every morning flies, full of hunger, happy is he who dies, in the storm of battle. He shall travel south across the sands, sorrowful where we left, there the dew of death is shed from the stroke of shields." And he recited another. "That was the first when we went to play the game of fray, where we had to fight. In Rome's domain, there I let the spears grow grey. The eagle screeches over the slain, at the great slaughter of men. My sword was drawn." Chapter 16. Now it so happens that they arrive in Denmark before King Ella's messengers and sit quietly with their troops. But the messengers arrive with their troops at the city where Ragnar's sons are holding a feast, and they enter the hall where they are drinking and approach the high seat where Ivar sits. Sigurd, Snake in the Eye, and Hvitserk the Stout sit playing taffel, while Bjorn Ironside sharpens his spear on the hall floor. And when King Ella's messengers come before Ivar, they greet him respectfully. He acknowledges their greeting and asks where they are from and what news they bring. And the one who was before them says that they are Englishmen, and that King Ella has sent them there with the news of Ragnar's fall, their father's. Hvitserk and Sigurd immediately let the taffel fall and consider these tidings carefully. Bjorn stands on the hall floor, leaning on his spear, and Ivar asks them carefully about the circumstances of his death. And they tell everything that had happened since he arrived in England until he met his end. And when the messengers finished their tale, Bjorn grasps his spear so tightly that his hands turn white, and he grips it so firmly that the imprint remains on the shaft. Then, when the messengers finish their account, Bjorn shatters the spear into 2 pieces with a forceful gesture. Hvitserk holds a taffel piece that he had killed, and he twists it so tightly that blood oozes from every nail hole. And Sigurd, Snake in the Eye, had been holding a knife and was scratching his nail when these tidings were told, and he ponders these tidings so deeply that he did not notice until the knife stood in his bone, and he did not flinch. And Ivar inquires about everything that had happened, and his complexion sometimes turned red, sometimes blue, and sometimes pale, and he was so swollen that his hair was all bristled from the rage that was in his chest. Now Hvitserk speaks up and says that vengeance could be swiftly initiated by killing King Ella's messengers. Ivar says, "That shall not be. They shall go in peace wherever they wish, and if there is anything lacking, they shall tell me, and I will provide it for them." And now that their errand is finished, they turn back out of the hall and to their ship. And when they have a fair wind, they set sail, and their journey goes well until they come to King Ella and tell him how each of them had reacted to this news. And when King Ella hears this, he says, "It is likely that either we must fear Ivar or no one else, based on what you tell me about him, and it would be good for us to appease him rather than provoke him further, and we shall hold on to our kingdom against him." Now he orders defences to be held around his entire kingdom so that no army could come upon him unexpectedly. And when King Ella's messengers had departed, the brothers hold a council on how they should seek revenge for Ragnar, their father. Then Ivar says, "I will have no part in this, nor will I gather any troops, because Ragnar met his fate as he deserved. He initiated his cause poorly from the beginning. He had no quarrel with King Ella, and it has often been said that if a man acts recklessly with wrongdoers, he will suffer disgrace, and I will accept compensation from King Ella if he is willing to offer it to me." But when his brothers hear this, they become very angry and say that they should never be so weak, even if he wishes it. "Many will say that our hands are crippled if we do not avenge our father, and we have travelled far and wide with our war banners and killed many innocent men. And it shall not be so. Instead, we shall prepare every seaworthy ship in Denmark. We shall gather troops so efficiently that every man capable of bearing a shield against King Ella shall go." But Ivar says that he will stay behind, and those ships that he has to command, except one which I own myself. And when it is known that Ivar makes no delay, they gather much less troops, but they do not delay any further. And as soon as they come to England, King Ella becomes aware of it, and immediately sounds his horn, and summons all men who wish to follow him. And now he gathers such a large force that no man could count them, and he goes to meet the brothers. And when they meet, Ivar is not among them in the battle, and so ends their battle with Ragnar's sons fleeing, and King Ella victorious. And when he is about to pursue the fleeing, Ivar says that he does not intend to return to his own lands. And I will see whether King Ella will grant me any honor or none, and it seems better to me to accept compensation from him than to go on such fruitless expeditions as we just did. Hvitserk says that he cannot have any dealings with him, and he must go with his possessions as he wishes. But we will never take money after our father. Ivar says that they would part ways then, and he asks them to govern the realm that they all owned together. And you shall send me loose money, as I demand. And when he had spoken, he bid them farewell. And he returns to King Ella. And when he comes before him, he greets the king respectfully and presents his case. I have come to see you, and I want to make peace with you on such terms as you have been willing to grant me. And now I see that I have nothing with you, and it seems better to me to accept such honor from you as you will grant me, than to let more of my men or myself fall before you. Then King Ella replies, Some people say that it is impossible to trust you, and you often speak fair when you intend deceit, and it will be unusual for us to rely on you or your brothers. I will say little to you if you do not allow it. I will swear to you that I will never oppose you. Now the king asks why he spoke of compensations. I want, says Ivar, that you give me the land where the ox hide covers, and I shall build a foundation around it, and I will not speak more to you. And I see that you will grant me no honor if you do not grant this. I do not know, says the king, that this may be harmful to us, even if you have this from my land, and certainly I will give it to you if you swear to me not to fight against me, and I do not fear your brothers if you are faithful to me. Chapter 17. Now they decide among themselves that Ivar would swear oaths to him, that he would not shoot against him or plot harm against him, but he would gain from England what is covered by ox hide, whatever he could get the most of. Now Ivar obtains a piece of ox hide, and he has it soaked, and then he has it stretched 3 times. Now he has it cut into strips all the way through, and then he has himself run between them, hair and flesh. And when this was done, the thong was so long that it was astonishing, and no one could imagine that it could become so. And then he has it spread out on a field, and it was such a wide land that it was a great city wide, and there he has the foundation marked as for great city walls. And then he hires many craftsmen, and has many houses built on that field, and there he has a great city made, and it is called London. It is the greatest of all cities, and most famous in all the Northlands. And now that he had this city built, he gave up his loose money. And he was so generous that he gave with both hands, and it was thought so highly of his wisdom that everyone sought him for his advice and problems. And he managed all matters as seemed best to each, and he became popular, so that he was a friend to everyone, and there is a great following for him against King Ella for treason, so that the king has him manage many matters and cases, and need not intervene himself. And when Ivar had arranged his affairs so well that it was considered to be a marvel, he sends men to his brothers with the message that they should send him gold and silver as much as he requested. And when these men come to his brothers, they tell their message, and how his plan was already set, for people did not know over what tricks he was plotting. And so they part, understanding that he had no affection left for what he was used to. Now they send the money he demanded, and when they come to Ivar, he gives all the money to the greatest men in the country, and draws troops away from King Ella, and all agreed that peace would prevail, even if he made an expedition there. And when Ivar had gathered his troops under his command, he sends men to his brothers to tell them to levy a levy across all the lands where their realm was held, and they challenged everyone they could find. And when this message reached their brothers, They understood quickly that he would now consider it very favorable that they would achieve victory. Now they gather troops throughout Denmark and Gotland and all the realms where they held power, and they gather an invincible army and have the common folk outside. Then they keep their ships to England both night and day, and now want to let spies go before them as least as possible. Now this army story is told to King Ella. Now he gathers his troops and gets little, because Ivar had drawn a great army away from him. Now Ivar goes to meet King Ella and says that he would end what he had promised. But I cannot control my brother's decision, but I can find them and see if they will stop their army and do no more harm than they have already done. Now Ivar goes to meet his brothers and urges them very much to go forward and make the battle as fierce as possible, for the king has much less troops. But they answer that he did not need to urge them, and it was the same to them as before. Now Ivar goes and meets King Ella, and tells him that they were much more eager and bold than they would listen to his words. And when I wanted to seek peace among you, they opposed it. Now I will end my days by not fighting against you, and I will be calm here and my troops, but the battle will go on with you as it may. Now they see the army of their brothers, and it goes so quickly that it was astonishing. Then Ivar says, "Now it is your turn, King Ella, to lead your troops, but I can tell you that they will give you a very harsh attack." And as soon as their troops met, a great battle ensued, and Ragnar's sons advanced hard through King Ella's formations, and they were so eager that they aimed to do as much damage as possible, and that battle was both long and hard. And here it ends, that King Ella and his troops are put to flight, and he is captured. And now Ivar is there and says that his death should be changed thus: "Now it is time to remember the day of death he chose for our father. Now the man who was appointed for this task should mark an eagle on his back as intimately as possible, and that eagle should be dyed with his blood." And the man appointed for this office does as Ivar commanded him. But King Ella was very sore before this office was finished. He now takes his own life, and they think they have now avenged their father, Ragnar. Ivar says that he will give them the realm that they all owned together, and he declares that he wants to rule over England. Chapter 18. After this, Hvitserk and Bjorn go home to their kingdom, and Sigurd as well, but Ivar remains and rules over England. From there they hold a great assembly with their troops and raid various lands. But Randalin, their mother, grew old, and Hvitserk, her son, had once raided in the east, and such great opposition came against him that he could not raise his shield, and he was captured. And he chose for himself that a pyre should be made from the heads of men. There he should burn, and so he ended his life. And when Randalin heard of this, she spoke a verse. A son awaited who met death in the east. Hvitserk was his name, never eager to flee. He warmed himself with the heads. Of the slain in battle, the prince chose that fate, brave in battle before he fell. And she spoke another verse. Heads they let roll to the hungry vultures, while the brave prince with fire overhead sang, what better death could? The axe lay beneath. All rulers die by the word of the all-ruler. And from Sigurd there is a great lineage descended. His daughter was named Ragnhild, mother of Harald Fairhair, who first ruled all of Norway alone, and Ivar ruled over England until his death from sickness. And when he lay in his deathbed, he said that he should bring himself there where the army was, and he said he expected that they would not gain victory when they came to the country. And when he breathed his last breath, it was done as he had spoken before, and he was laid in a mound. And many men say that when King Harald Sigurdsson came to England, he came to where Ivar had been, and he fell in that expedition. And when William the Bastard came to the land, he went there and broke open Ivar's mound, and saw Ivar untouched. Then he made a great pyre and had Ivar burned on the pyre, and after that he made his way inland and succeeded. And from Bjorn Ironside many men have come. From him comes a great lineage, Thord, who lived at Hofta on Hoftastrand, a great chieftain. And when Ragnar's sons were all dead, their troops dispersed in various ways, those who had followed them, and all those who had been with Ragnar's sons thought themselves of no worth to serve under other chieftains. There were 2 men who went widely through lands to find any chieftain who they thought it not dishonourable to serve, and they did not travel together. Chapter 19. There was an event in the lands where a king had 2 sons, and he fell ill and died, but his sons wanted to hold a feast after him. They invited to this feast all men who would hear of it within the next 3 years. Now this news spread far and wide, and during these 3 years they prepared for this feast. And when that summer came when the feast should be held, and the appointed time arrived, there was such a great multitude that no one knew the exact number, and many large halls and tents were set up outside. And as the evening of the first day passed, a man came to this hall. This man was large, so that no one was as large as he, and it was seen from his attire that he had been among mighty men. And when he entered the hall, he went before the brothers and greeted them, and asked where they would seat him. They looked favourably upon him, and bade him sit on the higher bench. It took the space of 2 men, and as soon as he had sat down, a drink was brought to him like to other men, and there was no horn so large that he could not empty it in one drink, and everyone saw that he thought nothing of all the others. And so it happened that another man came to this feast. He was even larger than the first. These men wore high hats, and when this man came before the high seat of the young kings, he greeted them in a polite manner, and asked them to show him to his seat. They said that this man should sit inside on the higher bench. Now he went to his seat, and they were so large together that 5 men could stand up before them. But the one who came first was less of a drinker. But the latter drank so quickly that he emptied nearly every horn by himself, and men did not find him to be drunk. Rather, he behaved modestly towards his companions and turned his back to them. The one who came first asked them to have some entertainment together, and I will be first. He grabbed his hand and spoke a verse. Tell of your deeds, I wish to hear. Where did you see a raven on a bush? Shake its bloody feathers. Often you meet another, on the road to death, but the bloody corpse draws, in the valley for the birds of prey. Now those sitting outside felt challenged by this and responded with a verse. Be silent, fated one. What cause have you for pride? You have never achieved what I can now. You have not fattened on the swords or sun's rays, nor given gifts to a noble horse. What do you achieve, drunkard? Now the one who came first answered, We led our horses through the raging surf, while on bright mail-coats blood flowed freely. The wolf yawned, eagles swallowed men, the grey sea foamed with the harvest of blood. And now the one who came later spoke. I followed Bjorn, keen in the battle storm. We were proven warriors, sometimes to Ragnar. I was not where warriors fought. In Bulgaria's land, therefore, I bear a wound on my side. Sit closer, friend. And so they recognized each other too late, and were then together at the feast. Chapter 20. There was a man named Ogmundr, who was called Ogmundr the Dane. He once sailed with 5 ships, and lay at Samsey in Munarvaga. It is said that the cooks went ashore to prepare food, while other men went into the woods for entertainment. There they found an ancient tree man, who was 40 cubits tall and covered in moss. Yet all the features were visible on him. They now discussed among themselves which great deity this might be. And then the tree man spoke. It was long ago when along the path Heckling's sons strode through the forest on the salty trail of bright beings. Then I became the ruler of this village, and so we settled, men of sword strokes, south by the salt, sons of Lothbrok. Then I was not sacrificed to death for men on Samsey southward. There they must stand, while the shore endures, a man among thorns and moss-covered. Now the clouds weep over me, neither warmth nor clothing touches me. And this seemed strange to people, and they later told it to others. Thank you for listening to this epic saga, and I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was a little deviation from the more traditional fairy tales. And thank you all for your support so far. The channel reached 100 subscribers a few days ago, and you have no idea how happy that makes me. Again, thank you, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. I will see you all again very soon.